Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloney. I'm the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership for TEPSA. And each week, I look to bring you different guests who have encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another and get them to share some of their story with you in hopes that it encourages you to tell your story. So this week, I am thrilled to have my special guest, Tyler Eatherton, on with me today. Tyler, go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. I appreciate you having me on here. So my name is Tyler Eatherton. I'm a junior high assistant principal in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I have been an assistant principal for 2 years at Little Rock Christian Academy, which is in, like I said, Little Rock, Arkansas, and we're actually the largest private school in the state of Arkansas. So for being a small state, yeah, we have larger numbers. I think I'm newly married for just the past a little bit over a year. And aside that, on the side of things that we love to do for fun, my wife and I, we go hiking with our dog, and then I love to do photography on the side. So we don't have kids, but we love to say that we have hundreds of kids at the schools that we serve at, because my wife is actually a mental health counselor at a neighboring school. So yeah.
Yeah, even it doesn't matter if you have your own children or not. The moment you become an educator, all those kids are your
Absolutely.
kids regardless. So, thinking
Absolutely.
about the whole education field, did you always want to be an educator?
I didn't. I actually, when I went to college, I was actually pre-dental for my first semester. And then in chemistry, I realized that this was not my calling really quickly. But I mean, thankfully, my family have a bunch of teachers, so I come from a line of teachers. My mom being one in particular. I remember as a little kid going to school with her, and she was doing classroom transformations before we ever called them classroom transformations. And so I remember just going late at night with her, and she would transform things into rainforests or oceans or whatever it is that we were working on. And so when I was really trying to think about what career I wanted to pursue, I instantly thought of her, and it was kind of a job that I wanted to dive into. So yeah, it
That's
was
awesome.
a happy surprise.
So you said you are a junior high or middle school assistant principal, right?
I'm a junior high, so we are just our building. We separate middle school from junior high on our campus, so we have just a seventh and eighth grade building, and so that's what I'm head of.
So when you were a teacher, did you also do middle school or junior high, or were you elementary, high school? What did you do when you were a teacher?
Yeah, so I taught 2 years in public school. I taught all-inclusive fifth grade. And then when I moved and transferred over to the private sector, I taught sixth grade literacy for 4 years. And then now I transitioned into seventh and eighth grade principal. So my first time with the seventh and eighth graders, I was a little nervous to be around them. Frankly, I was worried that some of them had more facial hair than I did or looked older than I did. And some do. But they are just big old kids, which I love. So
See,
they crave relationship.
I was a fifth grade teacher as well, and so it's so funny because I'm short, so everybody was always taller than me, and so it's so funny. I always thought about being in middle school or junior high. That'd be fun to be an educator there. I said, but I don't know if I could do that all day long because thinking about you were in upper elementary and now you're in junior high. I mean now you're in junior high. So
Yep.
what are some of the major differences, and do you ever still miss those elementary days?
I do. When I look back and, when we see fifth and sixth graders still running through our building to different classes, they're just always out of breath. They're always running places. They want to get there fast. They're always excited. And there's a part of me that just really misses that.
Mhm.
But what I love about junior high kids, it's no longer cool to be to class early. So they're right on time or a minute late. But I think what is really cool is how they can reason and how they are really pushing and craving mentorship. And they're at a stage where they can kind of give back in that mentorship, unlike fifth or sixth graders. So it's
So
been a joy.
what was school like for you growing up? Were you a good student? Was it difficult? Did you enjoy it?
I actually, my parents thought that I had selective or that I had mutism for a long time because
Really?
I did not talk. Really, all the way up until probably about fifth grade, I didn't say a word in class.
Wow.
Just incredibly shy, just nervous to kind of be my own person.
Mhm.
But thankfully, growing up a little bit in middle school, I had some really great teachers that kind of turned things around for me
Mhm.
and poured into my life. And so when I wanted to teach, those are the people that I thought of. And I was like, man, I want to be those people that kind of get a kid out of his shell. So yeah, but I was a good kid. No, I was terrified to get in trouble. My mom was an administrator at the next town over. I knew she would kill me. So
Yeah.
absolutely, always on my best behavior.
So what would you say is probably one of the biggest things you've learned about yourself since becoming an educator?
Oh man, there's so many things. I think daily, um, just pursuing meaningful relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That is the thing that I don't know if we model enough for kids, and really try to break that down for them what that looks like. But as an educator, I kind of was reflecting on my own life. Like, do I do that well? Do I uplift those that are around me? Do I pour in relationships, or am I just getting? And so, yeah, I think that was kind of what it revealed for me.
One thing I always find with administrators, especially, is that figuring out how to balance everything. How do you maintain balance so that you don't burn out?
Oh man, great question. Um, I'm not good at it. I mean, number one.
Most of us
Um,
aren't.
no, I get there early. I leave late. Um, Man, how do I balance it all? I think I really utilize my weekends. Like Saturdays, my phone is off and I am just enjoying life or building into those friendships that I have around me. But honestly, I love school. So burnout is hard for me because I enjoy being there. I love my teachers. My wife, since she works in a junior high, she just gets it. So she comes to school with me. Um, so it's a joy. I don't know. I,
And that's what it was for me. I enjoyed it so much that it was like me being there was kind of refueling at the same time, even though
yeah,
it was exhausting. And so, but like you, I think that it's important that, it's okay to enjoy it. It's okay to also enjoy your time off. And so, like, when you are away, to have those moments of disconnect. And for me, it was like, I didn't need a lot of them. I just needed some of them. Like, let me go watch my favorite show. Let me go
yep,
shopping. Let me go to the beach. Let me do these things that fuels me enough that I'm good to go. I don't have to have like a week of just completely
no.
nothing to be able to make it through.
Absolutely. And I recognize that some of my teachers get burned out really easily. Their fuse
Yeah.
is really short, and that's okay. And
Yeah.
so for them, a lot of times I have to give them permission that it's okay to have a boring lesson. It's okay to have a boring day. Like, that's okay. You don't have to be so high functioning all the time. So,
Well, you're quite active on social media and sharing some of the great things that are happening at your school and that you're involved in. When did that kind of become an avenue that you wanted to just be more active on?
yeah, absolutely. So I originally, before being a principal, whenever I was teaching, my side hustle was photography. And so it just kind of helped pay those bills whenever I needed it to kind of cover things. And so honestly, like, I learned to have a stronger social media presence for that photography business.
Right.
And so it kind of carried over as I kind of phased out from doing photography to really focus on being an administrator. I needed still that passion of getting into scenes, telling the story of what's going on, especially with my teachers and students. So that kind of carried over. And honestly, I got my administration job from photography. So my
Really?
current head of school contacted me via social media, and then I shot their family photos. And afterward, he asked me to coffee and then had me start the interview process. So I was never looking to leave teaching. I miss teaching desperately, but it's kind of something that I fell into. So.
That is so funny. I was teaching in the classroom too and had my master's in principal degree,
Yep.
but I wasn't looking to be a principal either until I got a Twitter direct message and I had
Yeah.
assistant superintendent just like pegging me, being like, hey,
Yep.
consider it. Hey, come over here. Hey, look at it. And it's so funny that when I talk about social media, I'm like, that's one of the powers of social media is it connects you in
Absolutely.
ways you would have never expected.
Absolutely. Well, and just, connecting and seeing things that you guys are doing with different
Mhm.
conferences that you're leading,
Mhm.
and just kind of being inspired by so many educators. It's so easy to share that with my teachers and
Mhm.
get them excited. And so it's awesome. I love it.
Now, one of the pitfalls, though, sometimes of social media is turning into this comparison game. So, how
Mhm.
do you utilize it but not allow yourself to get sucked in by feeling better or worse because of what you're seeing other people do?
Yeah, I think it's a daily battle, to be quite
Hmm.
honest with you.
It is.
So kind of seeing, so I don't know if I necessarily have it figured out. Especially like if you follow like things that are going on at the Ron Clark Academy,
Hmm.
and you're like, oh my goodness, like, why don't we have fire breathing dragons or whatever else is going on? We need to up our budget. I think just the perspective of we can't do it all.
Hmm.
And what is something that fits the culture of our school. And so for us, we send teachers to Ron Clark every year, but on the other end of that, we also send teachers to Phillips Exeter Academy in New Hampshire.
Oh, cool.
And so, which is this elite private school, it's everything that you would think it is. And they use Harkness style discussions, which is very low key and super meaty with text. And so we really want our teachers to have a really strong balance of crazy over the top engagement with lots of lights and sounds and textures and colors, but also these moments where we just pause and we take a break. And so finding that balance, I try to apply that to obviously social media as well. But frankly, I just don't log on if I need a break, if I start comparing myself.
There's several things in there I want to address that you just said. First of all, I love that you offer those alternating perspectives, because I think sometimes, especially as administrators, we can get so caught up in one belief that we just think everybody should do it this way. And it's just not the reality of the educators we're working with, but the kids we're working with either. Some kids like things to be not always so high energy or crazy color, and some of them don't always like the meaty stuff. And so it's finding that balance of what works for you. And I love that you give them multiple perspectives. But the other thing I love that you said is that when we're talking about social media, that it being a daily battle. And I think that that's something that's hugely important, because, people think when they go and look on social media accounts, especially when they see people with large followings, they think, oh my gosh, they've got it all together. They're so amazing. And it's like, even people with large followings struggle with that doubt, struggle with that comparison. Like, they'll go and see somebody with 10 followers doing something amazing. They're like, dang, my stuff sucks again. Like, I'm just not doing anything good. And I think that's what we all can fall into. But I love what you said about when you see that creeping up on you, it's like, I'm just going to log out. I'm just not going to look at it. I'm not going to be part of it. And I think that's an important thing to talk about, is when you reach those moments where your own self-worth is now being defined by the way you look at others, it's important to say, I might need to put that social media tool aside for a couple days until I can rediscover what I know is true about myself, and then go and ease back into it. And so I love that you do that. Thinking about the people that are in your life, who is somebody outside of family that has really impacted who you are today?
Oh, man. So many people along the way. I think it's the first person that pops in my mind is currently right now my principal, just in this phase of life. Just because just watching how he leads our teachers, he's just so calm and so patient. When there's so many moments in a junior high setting that I feel like my hair is literally on fire, and I don't know where we're going to go next or who's going to come up with the schedule. But just to watch his steadiness, I think that's the word that I would use to describe him. He's just so steady and methodical, and he's never quick to make a quick judgment. He always is willing to say, I need to take a second and pause. And there's just so much wisdom in that. But I do think growing up, a huge influence, I'm probably going to go back to my mom. Just in terms of wanting to be engaging, exciting. I remember her reading stories to us every single night. She had 12 different voices for different things. I grew up singing different songs about math or grammar or whatever it is. And so I'm that typical teacher's kid that I thrive off that stuff. I love it. I love the hokiness of everything, the cheesiness.
Well, one other thing that you are quite big into and a fan of is Survivor.
Yes.
So I've noticed that through your Instagram feed and things that you share that I'm a big Survivor fan as well, but I don't think I compare quite to your level of fandom. And so have you really sent in a video, an audition video ever before?
I have. So I have applied numerous times. I have tried every single audition that I can to get on. Actually just recently filmed another audition video where I have students that are involved in it and all sorts of different things. So I'm waiting for Jeff Rose to give me a call anytime he wants to. But I think that journey for me started when I was 9 years old. I remember watching the first episode, season 1, and I was just hooked. I think especially for a kid that just struggled socially, to watch people to try to figure it out and navigate it was, I don't know, just really enticing to me.
So. Well, what I find quite interesting about you is, and listening to you speak, is I would have never guessed that you were just such a quiet kid and had all those things, because you speak so well. How did you grow yourself into somebody who is confident in using your voice and not fearful or inadequate in that way?
Well, honestly, I think teaching really turned it around for me because you can't hide from that. So,
No.
I remember my first day of teaching when I shut that classroom door. And, I was teaching in a trailer at the time, in a lower income school district. And whenever I shut the door, I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm alone with these kids. And then I
Mhm.
thought that I'm in a trailer far away from the campus building. I'm like, I'm really alone with these kids. If I scream, nobody's coming. But I don't know, you just gain this confidence, and it starts out small with your kids and it just kind of grows. But I think with my teachers, that's why I'm so sensitive to how fast they get burned out when they need that interpersonal time.
Yeah.
And also just so sensitive to how my kids are feeling, my students. So just like you said, having those high intense moments, or if
Mhm.
we have house competitions going on, or if we have these activities where they have to be up and energetic, or sitting, standing, arguing, disagreeing, debating through things, that is so taxing on some of my kids, and I
Mhm.
see it on their faces. And so we really have to be so strategic in how we plan to make sure if a kid's not shining one class period, that we can set it up to where they shine the next class period. And what's our best way to do that, even with our silent leaders?
I
Just
love
because I so relate to that. But quite honestly, I just fake it. I fake it till I make it. So just a lot of deodorant and prayer.
That's amazing. See, that's a t-shirt in the making right there. You
Is
need
it?
to
I'm going to
you,
make one.
you
Yes.
need to go with that one. But I love though that you say that, because I can so relate to that so much, because what I find is a lot of people don't even realize that I'm like this extreme introvert, and it's very difficult for me to come out of my shell. But it's just like you said, when that door closes, it's like you don't have any other option. Like, if this is the career path that you chose, regardless of whether you are introverted or extroverted, you have to fake it and bring the energy, because that's what the kids want. They don't want somebody who is like really quiet. I don't want to do this. I'm so
Sure.
uncomfortable. Like, there's a lot of other careers out there if that's not for you, but you've got to fake it sometimes, even on our tough days. And what I
Sure.
love about, the research behind that is when you do begin to fake that energy, your brain begins to believe it, and then you're not faking it anymore. Like, it's
Correct.
really there, and it
Correct.
just becomes natural.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when you look back on your life and all the experiences that you've gotten to have, and I know this question may seem a little bigger than normal, so just pick one thing. But if you were to look at one thing in your life that really played a role into the man you are today, what would one of those things be?
Whew. I think so much of it really does kind of fall back to those first couple of years of teaching. Just such a huge struggle. Just adjusting to life outside of college, where you're just hit with instant community all the time.
Mm-hmm.
To for me moving to a town of 11,000 people to start my first teaching job, and I thought, what am I doing here? Number one. And where am I going to find friends? And so a teacher across the hall from me, who was a special ed teacher, he and I just like bonded. We clicked. He was this big old football coach, and I was this like tiny little nerdy English teacher, and we just were the best of friends. And he and I eventually spent a whole summer in Brazil. We were doing medical missions down there.
Oh,
And
cool.
it was just this moment of I don't know, just completely kind of leaving like entitlement behind, leaving all the creature comforts that we have, and just pouring out for people. And again, I think that's where just a heart for building relationships with people comes in, being intentional, especially when there's a culture divide. Kind of seeing just how privileged we are here to live in this country, and just kind of those discrepancies that even we see here in the United States. So I think that was a huge, formidable moment for me, just shaping me, just to being just living a life of gratitude as
And
well.
I love that you are still looking for ways to give back, whether that's through mission work or other ideas. I think that's a refueler in and of itself, to remind
Absolutely.
you not only why you do what you do, but just to be thankful in all these other ways, and all that impacts everything. So I think that's fantastic. Well,
Mm-hmm.
Tyler, one of the questions I always love to end these
Yeah.
conversations on is, if there was one thing that you wish more people knew or understood, what would your one thing be?
Whew. Just about anything.
Anything. Doesn't have to be education at all.
Whew. Um, One thing I wish people knew. Um, Well, I will probably stick with education just because my mind is in that vein. I think the one thing I wish people knew is that our students just crave to be leaders. And that is something, and I don't know, we always kind of talk, and I've been in school settings where, teachers are at the water cooler and they're always talking about, why aren't our kids like stepping up or doing this, or why aren't they leading? And so often my first thought is, are we giving them opportunities to actually do that? We demand it, but we never provide it. Right. And so what I love that we have kind of taken from Ron Clark is this house system that we do with our students, and just seeing them thrive with that. And on Fridays, just meeting with house leaders and watching them wrestle. And so many of the problems that they complain about are the same things that we as teachers complain about. Like, how do you get kids' attention? How do you stay captivating? How do you get them on mission for something? And I think it just was a real eye-opener for me as we've transitioned into that we don't do that enough. We don't call them into enough. And so that's something that has been really great for me this year.
I love that. Well, Tyler, you are doing fantastic work. I have loved following you on social media and getting to see all the great ideas and take things back for myself and share with others. So thank you so much for making time to come on and chat with me tonight.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It was great.
And thank you, everybody, for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out past episodes on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. They're all there. And if you go on to iTunes, hope you leave a review. Those always are grateful. And remember that I hope this conversation has inspired you in some way today to get out there and tell your story, because every story matters.